This is just like every other service we've had so far where it's completely packed, and I'm not sure if y'all love Jesus or t-shirts, but we'll just go with it. I'm glad you're here. Today is going to be really different than anything we've ever done at Mosaic when it comes to the sermon, but I'm going to kind of set it up for you, and it'll make sense as we go. We're in this series, Come and See, because I got to say it too, they already said it, but we're only 2 weeks away from our new building. I'm pretty excited about that, which means 2 weeks from today, if you show up here, you'll be alone and cold. It will be bad. Don't come here in 2 weeks. Go to the new building like they just showed you. So leading up to that new building, we're in this series called Come and See, where we're saying, hey, we want to let people know about how Jesus has impacted us. And when we read the scriptures, we don't see people arguing with people about Jesus. We don't see them saying, let's debate theology with you or say, you're wrong. When people want to introduce people to Jesus, they just say, come and see. That's it. So we're learning in this series how we can share with other people what Jesus has done in us by just saying, come and see. Come and see the man who changed my life. You make up your mind for yourself. Now, I have a confession to make, and my confession's really based on something Jesus said, because Jesus said more than once that the two most important commands in all of Scripture are, number one, love God with everything in you, and number two, love your neighbor as yourself. In fact, Scripture even says you can tell who loves God by seeing who loves their neighbor well. And my confession is this, is I'm not good at loving people. Like, I'm really bad at loving people. And I know this, and I know what Jesus said, so I've tried to do different things over the years. Like, one thing I've tried to do is pretend I'm an extrovert. Because I look at extroverts and think they look like they're loving people well. Maybe I just need to try to be like that. And that just doesn't work because that's not who I am. And then I thought, well, I just need to rationalize not loving people well. So I'll say this phrase that I'm sure you've never said, but I'll say, I'm too busy. I've got 4 kids. I lead a growing church. I got to date my wife. I got to take care of my own health. I got all this stuff going on. I'm too busy to love people well. And I just don't think that flies with Jesus. And so I've realized here's what the deal is. I want to love people. I try to love people. My problem is I don't know how, and I'm not very good at it. And then actually what happens if I'm not loving people well, I've realized, is my faith actually becomes centered on what happens in this room, and that's the extent of it. But when you read the scriptures, what happens in a room like this was never meant to be the sole existence of someone's faith. This was supposed to be the huddle that fired us up to go love people. And if we're not loving people, then that means this is the extent of my faith, and scripture makes it clear that's a very shallow faith if all it is about a church service. Fortunately, I've had a good example in my life. I have a mentor who has taught me how to love people well. And he's going to teach both of us how to love people well today. So I want you to take good notes as he teaches us. And before he does, I want to read you today's scripture. It comes from John chapter 20. And this takes place on the very first Easter morning. Jesus was crucified on a Friday. 2 days later, the third day, this is what happened. Mary was standing outside the tomb crying. And as she wept, she stooped and looked in. She saw 2 white-robed angels, one sitting at the head and the other at the foot of the place where the body of Jesus had been lying. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" the angels asked her. "Because they've taken away my Lord," she replied. She thinks somebody stole his dead body. "And I don't know where they've put him." She turned to leave and saw someone standing there. It was Jesus, but she didn't recognize him. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" Jesus asked her. "Who are you looking for?" She thought he was the gardener. "Sir," she said, "if you've taken him away, tell me where you've put him, and I'll go get him." "Mary," Jesus said. She turned to him and cried out, "Rabboni," which is Hebrew for teacher. Mary Magdalene found the disciples and told them, "I have seen the Lord."
Hey Mosaic, I'm real excited for you and for me today because of who I'm here sitting with. And I am in Louisville, Kentucky, my hometown, with Pastor Dave Stone. He's the pastor of Southeast Christian Church. You've heard me mention Southeast because it's the church I grew up at. But more important for you, it's the church that started Mosaic. And they were our primary funder to get this thing going 10 years ago. And the reason I'm hanging out with Dave today is because several months ago now, you came and taught our staff on our staff retreat. And one of the things he taught us, the thing that really hit us the hardest, was something that we're really talking about today for the entire sermon. And it's a simple but not easy way to love people. And I've kind of said that I want to love people. Jesus says to love people. Jesus loved people. I want to be like Jesus. But sometimes loving people is not easy, and I don't feel like I'm good at it. But Dave gave me a very practical thing to do on a daily basis, that no matter who you are, where you're at, what you're going through, whatever your personality, that we can do to love people well. So, Dave, thanks for being here today.
Good to see you, bud.
Good to see you.
I don't know if this is anything profound, so I think everybody at Mosaic right now is like, oh, wow, what is this going to be? I can't wait to hear this. And it is really simple. It's tough to live out, but what we talked about when I was with the staff of Mosaic, and a principle I've tried to live by, is just trying to learn people's names. And I know that sounds earth-shattering to you. I should have had a drum roll before it, but just learning people's names, being intentional about getting close to people, taking an interest in folks. I have a friend that talks about the 5-15 rule. And by 5:15, I'm not talking about when you leave work. The 5:15 is every 5 feet, you should look someone straight in the eyes. Every 15 feet, you should put a hand out and try to meet someone and find out their name. And when you get somebody's name, all of a sudden it's an invitation to go into a deeper relationship with them. We'll hear people say, well, you know, I'm praying for this guy in my neighborhood, or I'm praying for someone at work. It's a lot easier if you say, would you pray for Steve, or would you pray for Carl, or whoever it might be. And a name personalizes it. So when you're talking with somebody and you find out their name, all of a sudden you've gone from being acquaintances to now where there could be some type of friendship or relationship. And I think that we see all throughout the Bible, in the Old Testament, we see the importance of names. Names meant something. When they would name a child, it had a certain significance to it. When they would name a mountain after something had happened there, they would name it in such a way so it would say, this is where God provided. And they would choose a name that matched up with that. So names have always been important. But names are special to us because of the fact that it's the sweetest sound to our ear. You love to hear your name. And when you learn somebody's name and you call them by name the next time you see them, something happens, because you've just communicated to them, I have value to that person and they have value to me. And I went to the trouble of learning it because I care about that person.
So I know this isn't something you just believe, this is something you live out. So why don't you just tell us about, some of your experiences over the years of where do you learn names, whose names do you learn? I mean, it sounds so random. You could learn the name of anybody. Whose name do you learn?
I try to learn as many people as I possibly can. And so if you make a game out of it, for those of you who are competitive, it's kind of fun that way. I've done it with my kids. I remember one time we were traveling somewhere with a large group of people. We were on a cruise that I was speaking for, and my kids were in high school, and I said, hey, if you, at the end of this week, if you can tell me 100 names, I'll give you each $50. And so they both were gunning for $50. And so it's just a matter of being intentional about it. Now, of course, they both did it because they both had a motivation. We have to get to the point where the motivation is that person is more important than I am. There's a biblical principle that is woven throughout the fabric of the entire New Testament, and that is to honor one another above yourself. And so when I learn someone's name, I'm placing them on a higher pedestal, and I'm putting myself below them. So you can learn anybody's names. Most of us are creatures of habit. So we go to the same restaurants, we frequent the same places, so you might go to 3 or 4 restaurants is where you probably go for 80% of your eating out. Maybe it's Chipotle, Starbucks. It might be great Mexican food. It might be, something else that you like. But you're in the routine and you see some of the same people. Same with a post office, a bank, wherever it might be that you have to do, dropping off dry cleaning, whatever. So what I do is, I used to do it on paper. And now I just use my notes on my iPhone. And so that's my restaurants right there. So that's every restaurant, and that's everybody that works at Skyline Chili, at Roosters, at Smoothie King. And if you meet a new person, that's all the post office workers.
So you just keep one note, list where you go, and ask somebody their name as soon as you're done. You just type it in there.
Yeah, I cheat. When I get in my car, I put it in, or I might put some description about them, Carl, hunk of a man, humble, something like that, and I'll put that down next to your name. Or I might say something about their features that helps me remember them, or I'll put down where it is that I met them. And it's simple, and then the next time you go in that place, you just review and take a look at it, and you've got a better chance at it. So you study it, you call them by name, it means something to them, and what I've found is relationships start to form just out of learning somebody's name. It's crazy, but the way I would describe it is, in our society, the bar has been set so low that the smallest thing we do that puts a spotlight on somebody else and shows that we care about them goes a long way.
So, when I hear this, when you start talking about this back at our staff retreat, and even as I hear you talk now, it sounds like, well, learn somebody's name. I mean, come on, that's what I do with like my neighbor or whatever. But sometimes when I hear people talk about following Jesus or loving people like Jesus does, it's always framed as something dramatic. Like I've got to sell my stuff and go live in the worst part of town, or I've got to go to some third world country, or, something like that. Tell me how this is just loving people like Jesus loved them.
Well, we always are drawn to the miracles and the big things that Jesus did, right? But if you read through the Gospels, you see time and time again where he's having meals with people. He's interfacing with them. He's interacting with them. Look at how he elevates womanhood when he talks to a Samaritan woman. No one else would talk to a woman. No Jewish man would talk to a Samaritan woman. No Jew would talk to a Samaritan, let alone a man to a woman. So every time he's always elevating that other person's worth. So think of it like this. The story of Zacchaeus. Here's this greedy tax collector. Nobody can stand him. But Jesus, who's the talk of the town, comes on the scene. He's walking through with this mass of people all around him, and he sees Zacchaeus up in a tree, and he doesn't say, hey, short stuff. He doesn't say, hey, there's that greedy man. Instead, he says, Zacchaeus, and he calls him by name. And Jesus was constantly modeling that. And what it shows for us is that there's something significant that happens when a person hears their name. Think of it like this. John chapter 20. First person that Jesus appears to after his resurrection is a woman. Her name is Mary. And most people think that, they know the story of John 20 a little bit. When she hears Jesus' voice, that must be when she recognizes him. But that's not what John 20 says. John 20 has Jesus saying, who is it that you're looking for? And so she hears his voice, but she still doesn't know it's him. And Mary says, where have you taken him? She mistakes him to be the gardener. She says, where have you taken him? If you've taken him, tell me where he is, that I can go to where he is. And now the dialogue continues, and that's when Jesus says, Mary. And when Jesus says Mary, that's when she recognizes him. There's something about hearing your name. And all I'm suggesting is when we get out of our comfort zone and we start to build relationships with other people, and we go to the trouble of just saying, what's your name? It becomes a whole lot easier 3 conversations later, 2 weeks later, after you've been calling them by name, to sometimes say, hey, how can I pray for you? Or are things going well in your life right now? Or, you know my name and I know your name now. Here's my card if I can ever help you in any way. And all you're doing is just building a friendship. And the bar is low. And so when we say, I care about you, all of a sudden we have earned the right to be heard because we have that relationship with him.
We talk so often at Mosaic about come and see. That, Jesus said come and see. His disciples said come and see. We don't force Jesus on people. Just come and see for yourself. Bump into Jesus, figure out who he is for yourself. And so at Mosaic, we, I'm sure like Southeast, make pushes several times a year of Christmas, Easter, maybe 1 or 2 other times a year. Invite your friends, invite people, invite people, invite people. What I've been guilty of, and the thing you've convicted me of over the last several months, is I invite a ton of people, but it's not people I have relationships with. So I will invite the guy who makes my coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, but I've never asked him his name. I've never talked to him. I'll invite, the cashier at Chipotle, but I don't know who she is. I've seen her before.
Yeah.
And so what you challenged, when I started living out your challenge, what it seemed to do is when it gets time to invite again, is you're not an object to me. You're not like a tally mark in how many people I can invite.
A personal
you're not
project.
my project.
Yeah.
It's you are a person that I've taken time to get to know. And if you want, I have something I think you'll like.
Yeah.
But it's almost made inviting more about them than it is me, or just getting my spiritual check mark for the day.
So I think of the post office, or I think of Waffle House, two places where I'm at a whole lot. Nothing like fine cuisine, right? But at the post office, I learned the names of every worker, and evidently that stands out to them, because one time they thought I had left, and I overheard them talking about it after I had left. And they didn't know I was out there mailing a letter still that I had to address. And so you learn that that means something to them. But if I learn those names and I start to care about those people, it's a much easier invitation to make, because now it is out of a friendship. And I got a text from one of the postal employees who came to church this last weekend, didn't even know she was there. And Kim, we last minute decided to catch church, and we really enjoyed it. I had no idea she was there, but we have scattered seed, and my wife and I have invited her different times we've been in there, but we built that relationship with her first. So I think the way I look at it is kind of like where Jesus says we're just scattering seed. We don't know which ones are going to take root, but we're just going to scatter those seeds indiscriminately. And if we genuinely care about people and we don't see them as a project, then I think people can tell that. And so when you make that invitation for the 10th anniversary celebration, or for a Christmas Eve service, or whatever it might be, man, the odds of them coming just go up exponentially, because it's out of a relationship. So,
one of the things that's checked me about too is it changes how I interact with people in the service industry. I don't know if maybe you don't treat people as poorly as I do, but what's happened is I'll go in with the attitude of I need to learn somebody's name so I can love them well, because Jesus learned people's names and called them by name. And I'll be like, oh crap, now I can't complain about them because I'm here to learn their name and build a relationship with them, because I want to love them like Jesus did. So I guess I'll let that bad service go and won't complain as much. But tell me.
confession is good. This is good for you to say
thanks,
this. Good
thanks.
confession.
I'm working on it. Show people inside the box there, because you've been working at this for a long time.
I pulled this out, so.
Yeah, show them what's inside this here. You said you use your phone today, but this was pre iPhone.
Yeah, and I still use this. So this is solid, filled with just page after page, note after note. If I could get pictures of people, I've had their name next to as well. I'd study them. Here's notebooks from different years. This is, I think, 2011, of all the names of people that I met, with little notes beside them. And it was real easy just to put it in your pocket, put it in the back pocket. Like I said, you can use your phone now, but these work pretty well too. And I do different things at different times. And I'll even go to the trouble of what I call cheating if I have to, because it means so much to a person.
What's cheating?
I will, let's say I'm in a restaurant and I see a worker that I know I've met. I might text my son, who lives in Virginia, and describe the person and say, hey, this black-haired guy, about 20 years old, and we talked to him about cars when we were here. And maybe he can save me and tell me the name. And then I'm going to make it a point when I walk out of that place to call that person by name again. Now, you say, that is crazy. Why would you want to do that? I want to do that because I want, when that guy's going through a rough time, I want him to feel safe in contacting me or getting in touch with me, or feeling comfortable if he's going through a rough time. And I know that this might say, your folks at Mosaic, you might be saying, oh, well, yeah, well, you're a preacher. Well, these people don't know I'm a preacher. why would I blow my cover? Why would I ever want them to know that? So they don't know that. They usually don't find that out until after they have come to church, if it happened to be a week I was preaching. And they might never find out. But there's something more important than being a preacher, and that's being a Christ follower. And if I'm a Christ follower, I should be honoring people above myself regardless.
That's great. So at our staff retreat, you gave us a 3-step process of here's the, I think it was the 3 R's or something,
Yeah.
to remember people's names. Why don't you walk us through those on how we can do that?
Okay. I think it's really 5 R's, but if you can remember 3,
working on it.
dude, that's good. That's good. All right. Once you hear the name, repeat the name. Don't be a goofball. Hi, I'm Dave. What's your name?
Carl.
Carl. Good to meet you, Carl. How's everything at work, Carl? Carl. You'll see people that will just say Carl 20 times, and you're like, this dude is a loser, right? So I'm going to say it one time. I'm going to repeat it. When we get done talking, he walks away. I'm going to call him by name. Good to meet you, Carl. And after I repeat it, I'm then going to record it when I get the chance. So I'm going to record that name in my phone or on paper or someplace, and then I'm going to review it. This is where most people, I can do that. I can repeat it. I can record it. But they fail to review it. And
What does that look like?
that means that the next time that you have some dead time, let's say you're on an airplane, let's say you're at some place in a waiting room in a doctor's office.
You're listening to a sermon.
Yeah, Carl's preaching and you're bored out of your gourd and you're like, oh man, I got my phone with me though, and he thinks I'm looking at my Bible. I'm really reviewing my names that I've met in the last couple of weeks. So I've got restaurant names, I've got non-restaurant names. I've got police officers, I've got TSA agents, I've got postal work, I've got all these different categories because they all come in handy, trust me. But I'm going to review those when I have downtime. And if I review them, then I'm going to be more likely to remember them. If it's a setting where you know you're going to be, your kid's playing in a soccer league, okay? Well, you've got a soccer page on here. And when you come to practice with little Billy, you take a look before you get out. And that way when you go over to cheer with the other parents, you've got some different names that you can call out. All of a sudden it opens so many doors because you've got a relationship with them. So we have repeated, we have recorded, we have reviewed. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to risk. And the next time we see them, oh, was it Carl or was it Clyde? Was it Carl or Clyde? It's one of those two. I know it's one of those two. And you're going to go for it. It's like what your teachers used to tell you with the ACT test or SAT. Go with your first response. And 80% of the time, that's right. So I'm going to go for it. I'm going to say, hey, Carl, right? Is it Carl? Yeah. Yeah, is it Carl?
It's Carl.
Oh, good. Sure. It would have been a bummer if it was Clyde and I had it wrong this whole time.
That would be bad.
So you're going to go for it and you're going to risk it. And that leads to the fifth R, which is now you have retained it because of all the work that you've gone into. So with restaurant workers, people like that, when you have learned those names, now it's just a matter of a new person that you have. You add a new person in. You're not learning 10 new names. You've already got 10. Now you're just adding a new person in there, and you're reviewing that before you walk in the door.
It really changes how, in the last several months, it's really changed how I approach so many interactions. I was having breakfast with Mike and John on our staff just this week, and we were meeting at some breakfast restaurant, and it was kind of an unspoken contest between the three of us of who could say the waitress's name first, and so John got the coffee first. So he's like, thanks a lot, Donna, and we're like, whatever. Thanks, Donna, we like you too. But instead of us going there to be served, really there's a way for us to go there to serve, and you're not just a waitress, you're Donna in that instance. I know you've had, it sounds not really that deep, not like it's really changing somebody's life, but I know over time it has changed some people's lives. Why don't you tell us one of those stories about how just learning somebody's name was the first domino in somebody really being impacted by Jesus and the gospel?
Yeah, there have been a lot of different times where it started with just that simple phrase of, what's your name? And you think about it, Jesus even said that to the demon-possessed man.
Mm.
That's the first line he said to him. Everybody else ran from this guy. He was naked. He was cutting his body with rocks. They had him chained. And he comes running up, foaming at the mouth to Jesus. And what's the first thing Jesus says? He says, "What's your name?"
Yeah.
So I've seen just that little phrase, whether it's at Waffle House by going to the joy of learning different workers' names at different shifts and calling them by name. Over time, I've had the joy of getting to baptize two gals and a guy there. The dermatology office back 10 years ago, God just started putting me in touch with different people there, because if you go see a dermatologist, and you got to go back several weeks in a row. And so I got to know these people a little bit, and to see what happened in the life of that entire office, and to know that so many of them are now walking with Christ. Different restaurants. I think you were around back years ago. One time we had a party. I threw a party at my house for all the workers at this one restaurant. I don't know if you're around then. And so it's a little weird, a little unnerving for some people. And this might be out of your comfort zone, so if you don't want to do this, no pressure. But I made up little flyers and said, here's directions to our house, and we've got great prizes, and we've got food. And we invited all the workers to come over to our house, and we had a party for them. And it was so cool because it gave us an opportunity to, many of them didn't have any idea that we were Christians. They just thought we were just nice people, and didn't know I was a preacher. And that came out through something that they saw in the house. And it opened up all sorts of doors for funerals, for a variety of different things where we were able to minister. Probably my favorite story would be of some homeless people. And my son accidentally stumbled onto a homeless man in some woods where we were waiting for parking to clear from a ball game. And turned out we ended up becoming friends with this guy and coming back and visiting him. And pretty soon we learned the whole names of all the homeless camp. And I think God really used us to minister to them in a small way, but in a really big way. God used them to minister to our family during a tough time. And it was a tough time in my ministry, and I found myself escaping to these homeless people. Wow. And so that might be a good place to kind of wrap up, because we've made this whole thing about how we can minister to somebody else by giving them value. But invariably what will happen is that you will gain a new friendship and a new relationship, and they will bless you perhaps more than you will bless them.
Let me ask you one more question. There's some people hearing us who are saying, well, Dave sounds like an extrovert, or he's a pastor, so he's used to being around people. I couldn't do that. Talk to that person.
Great question. So my wife is an introvert. Okay. And we are total opposites. You know, I'm a party waiting to happen, and she's like, get me away from him, right? And so everybody's wired differently. But if you look in the gospel account of John, there's 3 glimpses that we see of Andrew. And Andrew was an introvert, and Andrew was the introverted brother to a highly extroverted brother, Simon Peter. Mm-hmm. And Simon Peter was always with the masses, and Andrew was always with the individual. And what's so cool is every time we see Andrew, he is always bringing someone to Jesus. In John 1, it's his brother. Mm-hmm. In John 6, it's some boys, a little boy at the feeding of the 5,000. Nobody else brought anybody to Jesus, but Andrew was out in the crowd, the introvert, and he found one person, and he knew the only answer to the whole situation was to bring that person to Jesus. And then later in John, I think it's in John chapter 12, we find someone bringing some Greeks to Andrew, and then Andrew brings the Greek people to Jesus. It's interesting that they didn't just bring him to Jesus first. They brought him to Andrew first because Andrew was in the habit of taking small groups of people to Jesus or individuals to Jesus. So you don't have to learn a million names. You don't need to learn 100 names. That's not what I'm talking about. You just need to learn one. And you need to just pray for that person and get involved in their life and invested in their life. And in time, you can introduce them to a relationship with Jesus Christ and introduce them to an awesome church like Mosaic. But don't get wrapped up in the numbers, because the kingdom grows one at a time, and it begins by saying, what's your name?
Thanks, Dave. There's a lot of reasons I want to be like Dave Stone. I want to be a great preacher. I want to be a good husband and a good dad. I want to be a great leader. But the reason I want to follow his example is because he loved me. And when I was just a little kid, growing up in this church, you had literally thousands of people inside the church, let alone those in your neighborhood and outside the church to pastor. And but you knew my name. And that's why I want to be like Dave. So don't get mad if I forget your name, but I'm working on it because I want to love you like he's loved me. So thanks a lot, Dave. We appreciate it.
Love you, bud.
Love you too, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. I got to tell you what happened as soon as we finished filming that. We got in Dave's SUV. He took me to the airport. I was racing through the airport because I was barely going to make my flight. I just made it on time, got in my seat, was texting my wife and catching up on some texts and emails. And the lady was doing the safety spiel, right, on the airplane. I thought, I've been on this airline a lot. I know the safety spiel. I don't need to pay a lick of attention to what she's talking about. Then I hear her start laughing. And I look up, she says, none of y'all were paying attention to me just now. So she says, I have a quiz for you and I'm going to give a prize. She said, I'll give a prize to anybody who can tell me, number one, how many emergency exits are on this plane, to which I immediately think 6. I've flown on this plane before. I know there's 6. So I'm thinking, I've got the prize. And then she goes, tell me how many emergency exits there are and tell me my name. And I'm thinking, oh, crap. I didn't know. So I texted Dave, and he goes, well, keep working on it, buddy. Those 3 R's. It's 5 R's. I got it. 5 R's. I know. Y'all did laugh a little too hard when he said, Carl, that hunk of a man. I was a little offended. I will tell you that. But here's what I believe. I've said this in this series. I believe the next 6 years of our church hinges on how we act for the next 6 months. Because how we let other people know how Jesus has impacted us will determine how they act when they start coming to our new building. And so the homework this week is going to be the same. It's going to be the same next week. We want you to take a stack of these invite cards, 5 of them. I want you to hand them out this week. But this week, I hope you'll take the added homework of not just handing them out maybe anonymously, but giving them to someone whose name you know, or if you don't know them, asking the words we see in Scripture, what's your name? I heard a cool story of somebody at Mosaic, how they're already planning on doing that this week. This week's Halloween. So they have candy that they're going to give out to all the neighborhood kids, but they also got a keg of beer that they're going to give out to all the neighborhood adults with the Mosaic invite card. I was like, what's that address again? They didn't tell me. But I want you to accept the challenge of loving people where you are. And you don't have to do something super dramatic and outside your personality to love people well. To start loving people, probably the best thing you can do is just say, what's your name? Let's pray. Jesus, thanks for Dave teaching us how to love people well today. And I pray that we will follow his example. It's simple, but not easy. That's the truth. But help us take a genuine interest in honoring people above ourselves so we can be like you. It's in your name that we pray. Amen. We're going to celebrate communion now. It's something we do every week at Mosaic. And the reason we celebrate communion is to remind ourselves of something that Scripture talks about. See, the last book of the Bible is called Revelation, and it has this weird imagery, weird metaphors in there. If you're new to the Bible, don't try to read it because it's confusing, about the end of the world and heaven and hell and all this complex stuff. But something that the book of Revelation says that is really helpful is it says at the end of time, when Jesus returns, those who are his will be recognized in one way. And it says he will open something called the book of life, and he will see your name. Jesus knows your name. So here's why we celebrate communion. Here's why we need Jesus. Because all of us knew the right thing to do, and we didn't do it. Whether we called that God or our conscience or whatever, it was God, and we said no thanks, and we did what we wanted to do instead. We set ourselves up as God. But what Scripture teaches and what you know in your soul is that separated us from God. And that separation is a canyon that we can't cross by ourselves because you've tried to be good enough and it hasn't worked. The good news is God sent his one and only Son, Jesus. And Jesus died on a cross to pay the penalty for our sin so that whoever says, Jesus, I want to make you my leader and forgiver forever, that you get washed clean, you get made new, and you're a child of God. So here's why we celebrate communion. We're going to pass a tray down your row, and you're going to receive a stack of cups. And if you follow Jesus, we want you to take a stack of those cups. One of them has a little cracker that represents Jesus' body that was beaten and bruised and executed. And another cup has some juice that represents Jesus' blood that was spilled out when they put a crown of thorns on his head, and when they whipped him, and when they stabbed him, and when they put nails through his hands and his feet. And that's our reminder that Jesus did those things for us so that we could be washed clean, so we could be made new, so that Jesus would know your name. So as we celebrate communion, you can eat and drink that anytime while our band's playing. If you follow Jesus, I want you to be reminded of the grace you have. And if you don't follow Jesus, I want you to use this as a moment to ask, what's it going to take for me to quit trying to be good enough on my own? What's it going to take for me to say, Jesus, I give up. Jesus, I'm in. Jesus, help. And if you've reached that point, what we want you to do is check the baptism box in your connection card, because we'll call you this week and we'll say, hey, let's have a conversation about what it means to give your life to Jesus, because we want your name to be written in the book of life. Let's celebrate communion together right now.